So, ladies and gentlemen, if tech had a movie trailer, and that's definitely going to be coming out very soon, I wouldn't be surprised, then this would be the moment when the music slowly starts getting intense. AI is coming on board and it's rewriting the script. Quantum computing is bending reality, and green tech is flipping the sustainability game. The twists that are taking place, they're actually happening in real time. So what next? We're looking at total disruption, or are we looking at ultimate optimization? A tech utopia or some kind of system overhaul? I think our global business leaders that are going to come and join us on this session are going to be able to take us through some of the bold bets, the unexpected innovations that are going to come in and shape the next era. So join us for this super engaging conversation where some of the most influential leaders who are shaping the future of industrial automation, digital transformation, as well as cybersecurity are all coming and joining us on this stage. So can we first please invite onto our stage Barbara Frey, Executive Vice President, Industrial Automation, and member of the Executive Committee, Schneider Electric. As the leader of Schneider Electric's global industrial automation business, she's been driving innovation and efficiency on a global scale since joining the company's executive committee in 2019. We're also joined by, oh, ladies, I wanted to give everyone a quick introduction. I'll hurry up on this one. We're also joined by Jennifer Hartsock, Executive Vice President and Chief Information and Digital Officer at Kaggle. We also have Shobhi Ramakrishnan, Chief Digital as well as Technology Officer, GSK. And steering the conversation, a warm welcome to none other than Akhilesh Tuteja, Global Cybersecurity Leader, Head Clients and Markets National Alliances at KPMG. Over to y'all.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely wonderful, Fisher. Thank you so much. Can I have a round of applause for her? Thank you. Thank you so much. I couldn't have asked for a better panel, and I think what a wonderful surprise I've got today with meeting all of you in person, and thank you so much for joining us here. But before we start the discussion, I want to ask you a thought experiment. What is one thing comes to your mind when you think of plumbing? What is the one thing which comes to your mind when you think of plumbing? I asked this question to many people, and some said that maybe cloud, because that's what this group talks about, is the data plumbing. But to me, what comes to my mind is a toilet. So today we are going to talk about toilet, a love story, a prem katha. A little bit about, if you were to ask me what's common between a cloud and toilet, there are a few things. The first one is both cloud and toilets have evolved rather nicely in the same way. The cloud started with storage, and so did what I call our toilet 1.0. They started with storage. Somebody had to come and clean them up if you're from India and some other parts of the country. Many, many years ago, I'm taking back the memory. And then they started to get onto the processing, and now the clouds also do some bit of processing. Toilets are also doing a processing, and that's the concept of smart toilet. And then comes the real optimization, because today's smart toilets are capable of not just analyzing, but also are optimizing water consumption, many things, and which is what the cloud is doing. Many years ago, I heard this term, the CEO said that the results matter, and the results matter to our body as well. So I want to connect the dots with three of these wonderful colleagues which you have today. And I thought, what's common across these three panelists which you got, which is Barbara, Jen, and Shobhi? And I find that the one thing which is common is that they take the journey, what I've used to listening, from farm to fork to seed to toilet. How do you extend the story from farm to fork to seed to toilet? Because we see companies like Cargill, they are trying to look at how do you make the food far more valuable? How do we make food far more nutritious? How do we make the food more healthier? And Barbara works for a company which tries to make a lot of industrial processing more efficient, our food more healthier, and many other things. And what's most fascinating is Shobhi is from GSK, where we are looking at how do we analyze the results which matter, which is the poop every day which you produce. Sorry for the bad word here. But the smart toilets in the future will be able to analyze, and hopefully through the blockchain kind of a system, we'll be able to say, when I go to tomorrow morning, what I ate yesterday and 2 days before can actually be traced back to where it all originated from. This panel is not about here and now. In this panel, we are not going to talk about what will happen in 5 years, because I'm told that nobody is interested in talking about 5 years in the future. Because 5 years in the future, you can be proved wrong. So we are going to talk about 50 years in the future, or maybe 100 years in the future, because the good news with that is that I'll be dead, and whoever come to me will not be able to say, what I said was right or wrong. And I hope you'll all be alive, because you're creating technology which really matter. So what I'm going to talk about today are the topics, and I have no information more than what these panelists have, and therefore I'm going to turn to them to talk about how today's technologies are shaping our future, and what technology will really move beyond transformation and optimization to changing the way we live, we work, and we operate as society. So thank you, nasscom, for bringing me this opportunity to have these wonderful panelists to talk about how do we take the journey of seed to the outcome through technology. So without that, let me first, my first question is going to be from the people who are dealing with seeds and fruit, food and crop. But before that, I have an opportunity for all of you also to predict how the future will look like. So if I could have Mukesh show a QR code here. That QR code is what I call the tech Tinder. And I know you're not allowed to use Tinder at work, so maybe you're allowed to use a tech Tinder at nasscom. And here are going to be a few questions, and all you need to do is that, do you love this technology or you hate this technology? And we will look at your results after we are done with the panel. So while you are at the tech Tinder, my first question to Barbara, to you. And this is a very interesting question, and I'm starting with a very far end of it, 100 years from now. So 100 years from now, when historians write the role of technology in our world, in transforming particularly food, what do you think would be one of the biggest, or many of the biggest breakthrough will be in food technology, which we'll hear 100 years from now?
So first, I am incredibly uncomfortable that Tech Tinder is up behind us right now. I'm not entirely sure what's in there, but we're just going to assume it's okay. So I don't know how many of you know a lot about Cargill, so maybe I'll take just 30 seconds to give you an overview of what it is that we do and who we are. So we're 160 years old. We are one of the largest privately owned organizations in the world. We have 150,000 employees and operate in more than 70 countries. So we're complicated. And we start in our ag supply chain, so our agriculture business, and we go all the way through food ingredients and protein. And in fact, I have customers in this room, we have supplier partnerships in this room. And so this idea of an interconnected supply chain is so very, very important to us. And because we've been around 160 years, I actually am okay making predictions for 100 years in the future. Again, because I also plan to be dead then. So none of you can hold me accountable for whether I'm right or wrong. But here's what I can say. Whatever we think it is, we are wrong. What I do know about what we do is that we have the opportunity, in fact, we have the obligation to explore multiple technology breakthroughs in order to continue to talk about how we create a sustainable supply chain for the future. So our purpose is we nourish the world in a safe, responsible, and sustainable way. That is meaningful. And so when I say we have an obligation, we have to look at it from decades and centuries from now, because here's what I know to be true. The population of the world is growing. The planet climate is warming. And we have growing middle class around the world, including right here in India, that expects to have higher quality diets than they've ever expected before. So in order to do that, we place bets. We place lots of bets. So if I were to sit here and say, of course, generative AI is going to be cool, but that'll be cool 5 years from now. So what we think will be really cool is the combination of technology to help our farmers succeed and all the way to our consumers succeeding. In fact, it was funny, we were talking about the toilet before, and I will just say out loud, he was like, oh, we're talking about, it'll analyze your output and give you real-time feedback. I'm like, we already do that with chickens. Too late. We can already optimize the diet of chickens to keep them healthier so that we can have that safe, responsible, and sustainable supply chain. So I think that, again, what I would say overall is that we got to place all the bets, because the world's problems are complex, which means that we have an obligation to explore all of them to figure out which ones will be the right unlock to create that future.
That's so fascinating. In fact, I realize that 100 years doesn't seem like, because if you're doing all of that stuff here, but one thing which I want to pick up from yours is that whatever we think, we will all be wrong. And I think that's the word which I want to take. So we need to invent a future which today seems almost impossible. Let me turn to you, Barbara, because that's something which I'm always very fascinated about, the energy industry. You contribute so much about making optimization and driving a lot of progress. And my question to you is, now I'm not taking you 100 years, I'm taking you 50 years. A little bit of discount because we know each other well. The energy landscape of 2030, so right now from 2025 to let's say 2050 to 2060, what will we see at the crossroad of climate? That's one area which people worry about. Industrial revolution, which is what we need. And today's technology like LLM, which consumes so much of energy, what do you think would be the one biggest thing which we need to worry about so that we can be happy about our climate sustainability and energy security?
Look, as Schneider Electric, who is in energy management and industrial automation, we are absolutely convinced if you want to achieve the climate targets which have been set by 2050, 2060 by the different continents, we have to electrify. You have to electrify. Be it the mobility, be it the industry, but you have to do it in a way that everybody stays competitive. So it cannot be on the cost of profitability or making it absolutely something that doesn't work. So 80% of all demand in 2050 should be electricity. And what does that mean? That means that specifically the industry now has to become more efficient. So you have to digitize more, you have to go to automation approaches, which are software defined, which are open, which allows you to make better analytics, complemented then with software. And you really need to decarbonize your processes through electrification. And this will, for me, the big business driver for many, many businesses in the next 20 to 30 years. Now, there is ups and downs. There is elections with different opinions. But even looking at the US, I think the electrification will also go forward in the US. There is no way around. Also from a profitability standpoint of view and becoming less dependent on certain energy resources that you electrify. And therefore, energy efficiency, productivity is one of the big levers that is still not used enough. And specifically when we talk about data centers. So artificial intelligence is a big lever to get to these efficiency gains. So my dream is, and you know, engineers are very lazy guys. And when you look back the last 50 years, every innovation was being driven to become more efficient. So maybe in 50 years, because of the help of artificial intelligence, you can make the planning of a whole plant or the changes in a whole plant within 2 days. And you can realize things or ideas that you had a half an hour ago in a much faster way than we do it today. Today it's much longer. It takes months, years to implement certain innovations. And when I'm then talking about artificial intelligence, specifically with young people, everybody says, this is the new poison of the future. No, there is an obligation that this industry also becomes energy efficient and, by the way, also carbon neutral. So many of the big hyperscalers, they are working on solutions where they become, in principle, carbon neutral and really can have a sustainable solution. And I was happy when DeepSeek, not because of the share price of Schneider Electric that dropped with this announcement, but DeepSeek brought a disruption into this and said, hey, you can do it with much less energy. And that's, for me, highly motivating. That means there are ways to bring down the energy consumption to do artificial intelligence as a means for more efficiency.
That's so beautiful. I love that. You the DeepSeek moment. I'm sure all of us were inspired by saying, what can we do more than what we have seen so far? But I definitely picked up your point is engineers are lazy, and therefore they try to make things more efficient. I wish the world produces more and more lazy engineers, designers, thinkers, and all of that, so that we become more and more efficient. Thank you so much for that. Let me turn to you, Shobi, and sorry for coming in the last, but the advantage I'll give you is that I'll take you only about 10 years from now, because I think I'm really worried. While all of these predictions I can live without whatever happens, but pharmaceutical life sciences, I want to see some results sooner because I don't want to die that badly. So let's talk about 2035. Right now we see a lot of things are getting personalized, but medicine. So when it comes to not only just my Netflix content, but even the perfume these days or the deo these days getting personalized based on my skin odor, sorry, stay away from me. When do we start to see that the pharmaceutical life sciences industry starts to get more real about creating precision medicines, personalized, fit for my purpose, and addresses exactly what I need without taking away all of the issues which come with the kind of medication? So any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I do intend to live for 10 years, so I'm obligated to get my predictions right. So for those of you who don't know GSK, we are a global biopharma company, and we produce transformational medicines and vaccines. That's what we do for a living. And our ambition is to have a positive impact on the health of 2.5 billion people over the next decade. So to answer your question, I think there is an incredible convergence of science and technology that is going to shape the next 2 decades. And I think at the intersection of that, new possibilities. There are precision medicines here right now. 10 years ago, we were working on medicines that were based on curing cancer, based on genetic biomarkers. So if you had a gene mutation, et cetera. But I think it's not done at scale, and it's hard to do this at scale because biology turns out to be very, very complex. But I do think there are more novel mechanisms for us to be able to engineer biology and see the progression of disease and therefore intervene with prevention. And I think that's an incredibly exciting thing. What will happen in 2035? I think I'll probably quote Steve Jobs to say, you cannot connect these dots forward. You can only connect the dots backward. Because if we sat at this stage 10 years ago and we said, what would be the world's largest company, we wouldn't have predicted NVIDIA. Or we wouldn't have said, what's going to cure world diseases. We wouldn't have said mRNA. But these things were afoot already 10 years ago. mRNA was very much visceral investments. Investments were going on. Excitement was there about this tech. And I would see the same for all of NVIDIA's technology 10 years ago. So similarly, drug discovery and all the opportunities for reimagining this drug discovery is already underfoot. And we can see that happening right now. So if I had to zoom out a decade out and say what could be true, I think for patients, prevention could actually be the norm because we can simulate diseases and we can intervene much earlier. So prevention can actually be the norm versus treatment, which is the norm today. The second thing that I would predict is that inside our companies like us, it takes us at least a decade and probably an average of $2.3 billion to bring one medicine to market at scale. So it takes a long time to do this. And for us, inside our company, if you looked inside our R&D department, there are thousands of scientists who are processing incredible amounts of scientific data and scientific literature and are running large-scale experiments to generate data. In 1 quarter, we generate more data than we did in 300 years of our history. And then they work with a small number of computational scientists to crunch this data. And I think with the capabilities of AI, but also just broadly all the technologies, I think we're going to see that there's going to be more data scientists as well as machine intelligence that's going to provide substantial amounts of data processing, but also be in a leading positions with the reasoning models that we have to be co-pilots for these scientists, to reason together on what are the targets we should go after, what are the molecules we should design, how should we design our trials. And I think these scientific co-pilots are going to become a reality over the next 10 years or so.
That's amazing. I think this really makes me feel very happy and empowered as somebody who's been part of the technology, because if this is what you're seeing come up around the corner, I think our future is very, very good. So the future of humanity, thank you so much for bringing that. I'm conscious of time, and I'll go back in the same sequence again. And Jen, if I were to ask you a question, one of the things and when I meet people like you, I feel humbled because you are trying to solve a very big problem. Food security is a big issue. So while I talked about saying what would be the breakthrough, but here and now, how are you using technology to drive food security, avoidance of food waste, food supply chain, all of those things? Give us some real-world examples and how we should learn from your industry.
Yeah, and there's so much we can learn from each other. And this is where I actually get incredibly energized at events like this, because it allows us to connect and see where we have similarities, see where we have similar challenges, and share our experience so that we can solve this together. Because in our world, food supply chain means that we have to start with our farmers. We have to find ways to help them cope with the world that is changing around them. That is inclusive of regenerative agriculture practices. It's inclusive of creating an industry that is attractive for people to work in. I don't know how many of you have farmers in your family, but it is harder to convince the next generation to go into the farming industry, and that should worry all of us. Because if you want to talk about food security, it has to work for our farmers. And then if you go all the way through that incredibly complex supply chain, it has to work for all of us as consumers as well. So to your point, how are we using technology? We're using both technology and our partnerships around the world to help our farmers know how to continue to compete well and be able to support their families as the world changes around them. It is everything about data traceability. So we understand where our food comes from, we understand the characteristics that helped grow it to be the way it is, and then we can ultimately use that and science to be able to figure out how to create a healthier food system. One thing I want to assure everyone, our food system is healthier and safer than it's ever been. Now, is it perfect? Heavens no. But that is where technology can come in and continue to help us evolve as the world continues to change. And then ultimately, we as consumers, we have to use all that traceability and all that data to help influence our buying habits. Because the buying habits of our consumers will ultimately justify all of that investment in technology all the way through the middle. A simple, really exciting example, and of course we can't get off the stage and not talk about generative AI. Like that would be embarrassing at a technology conference. So we're using generative AI to help connect that information throughout the company and all the way out to our customers. So we always say, like, wouldn't it be cool if Cargill could know what Cargill already knows? You could all put your own company name in that sentence. So one of the things we're doing is we're doing just like you guys, like we're gathering that data that all of our food scientists and all of our engineers and everybody puts together, and then simplifying the access to that information so that we can use it to help each other. Because not only do we have to operate globally at Cargill, we have to operate locally at Cargill too. So we have to connect those dots. And I can't think of anything other than technology that's going to help us continue to solve those problems.
Fantastic. Can I have a round of applause for what she just said, that, our food system has never been healthier and safer than what it is. It makes me feel good. And the point you made about the farmers, I feel good when a group of our engineers, leaders, etc., are actually trying to solve that problem, saying, how do we create more farmers? Whatever we might do with Gen AI, I think we'll need farmers, and therefore sustainability of farmers is very important. Thank you so much for addressing such a sensitive and touching topic to my heart. Turning to you, Barbara, you are doing a really difficult task of not just looking at IT, but combination of IT and OT. And that creates enormous possibility of intelligent machines. Today we heard that, maybe consciousness is a different thing, but when you have all of these adaptive autonomous machines, what kind of risk do you see, and how is Schneider Electric solving those today?
I think, first of all, you have to get to that status. So we talk a lot about artificial intelligence will change the world, and then we go and look at our use cases. Machine vision is the use case number one in the industry. So you have a person who looks at some goods, like in electronics, and makes a decision, this is good, this is not good. Now you can replace this with artificial intelligence, and you can really make a better workplace, and you get better quality and yield output. But that's 90% of all the use cases. And the big thing that you really can say, hey, we can share data, we can build a database which goes over the different players in the industry, we are not yet there. And usually my call to the people and the industry, and specifically also the end user, let's find a way how we can share more data in the industry so that we can build the model of tomorrow. Every customer, by the way, also Schneider Electric, I have at the moment a big discussion with our CDO about sharing data with a third-party supplier. And he says, no. And I said, look, I go to my customers, and I would like to convince them sharing data in a certain space, and we try to do this through our Connect platform, makes absolutely sense. Because you provide to your system, your upstream system, data which allows you to become more competitive, which allows you in the long term to make more sustainable solution. And this is, for me, the big transformation we still have to go through.
I fully agree with you, and I think I'm glad that we are in hands of people like you who know it all, and very good. My last question, again, Shobhi, to you, and on similar line, we all trust life sciences industry. We trust everything. In fact, I always say that we spend more time booking a hotel night than to research which drug I should be taking on because we trust you. That's a huge responsibility on life science pharmaceutical industry. How do you strike the right balance between that need for that trust and high degree of safety, compliance, etc., and continuing to push the boundary of innovation?
Yeah, no, I think it's a super important question. I think with all the data and technology at our disposal, I think we have enormous power. And with that enormous power comes enormous responsibility. So we take these things incredibly seriously. Our culture is be ambitious for patients, be accountable for impact, and do the right thing. That's it. There's nothing else that people need to do in order to work at GSK. And the backdrop for this is we work with incredibly large public data sets with patient data, et cetera. We work with proprietary data sets. We have a partnership with a company called Ocker Bio for liver disease data. We have partnerships with Tempus for oncology data. We have a collaboration going on with Oxford for cancer vaccines. And each of these partnerships and collaborations are underpinned by trust, and therefore our deep expertise as well as deep care for data privacy and data security is almost a given. And what we try to do is we have a philosophy that if you want to have fast cars, you need good brakes. So my chief information security officer, he says, I'm your good brakes on the fast car, right? So we think quite a bit about how do we govern for pace and progress, not just to park our fancy car in the garage, but we try to build in security into everything we do. We build privacy into everything we do. We stood up an AI ethics council back in 2018 when it wasn't even ChatGPT wasn't a thing, and AI governance plays a big role in giving the guardrails, et cetera. So we think about this all the time, but I will say that trust comes down to people and the culture that you have. So if there was anything I obsess over, it's those two things. Who do we have on our teams, and how do they work together, and what values do they embody? So that's how we think about it.
That's very nice. Trust comes from people. I think that's a very underpinning statement. I know I could go on and on because you guys are so inspiring. What are you telling me about? I always thought that technology is doing much more, but today I'm enlightened a lot beyond just solving the homework for my daughter. I think technology is also getting me better and safer food and better healthcare and better energy. Unfortunately, we are end of time. It's customary in all these sessions at the end to ask the participants like you to say, what is that one big prediction you think you will do? And I realize that could be very dangerous, and your companies may not support that kind of thing. So we've actually outsourced that problem to a technology randomizer. And here my colleague, Hina, she's got a fortune cookie for all of you. Okay, I'm going to request you to just break one fortune cookie and tell us what's your prediction of the future is going to look like. While you do that, can I have the results of the Tech Tinder outcome? This is the audience which is going to say us saying what do they believe. So Mukesh, can I get the results please of all that technology which you love or hate? So the most loved technology which you guys have selected is AI working overtime so that humans work only 3 days a week. Personalized medicine for all. And this one is very interesting. Algorithm use quantum entanglement to match soulmate using vibes than on profile. So I love that. And of the many technologies which you kind of voted for, the three most hated are gene editing is commoditized, and you can choose how your kid's going to look like. You still want to have those surprise-looking kids. No one wants to meet another human. We love AI companions. I'm glad that's not going to happen on this conference today. And the third one is fully autonomous AI systems take over national decision-making, replacing human politicians entirely. I would have loved for that one, by the way, but I'm sure this audience doesn't believe that. So on that note, I just want to close with a wonderful round of applause for all these people who did a great job. But my last take, and I want to say the last take, what I said, what's common between cloud technologies and toilet? The one last thing before I want you to leave from this session is, what are you most concerned about when you are on cloud and when you're on toilet? It's privacy. So that's the commonality between cloud and toilet. So with that, thank you very much. You guys did an amazing job. I'm glad that I got you here. Thank you so much. And sorry, you're going to read your predictions. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
In the algorithm of life, may your IDs always be the disruptive variable. That's a good one, huh?
These are really super meaningful. AI predicts you will disrupt the future, but refuses to share the exact timeline.
Engineers will love this. Your next big innovation is just one failed experiment away, embrace the glitch. I'm from Silicon Valley, I can vouch for that.